So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. This evening's webinar is focusing on fertilizer and lime advice for 2022. This evening we have two speakers. Enda O'Hart from the Teagasc office in Castlereagh is going to deal with the fertilizer side of things, and Shane Devaney, who's a Teagasc advisor based in Longford, is going to deal with the lime side of things. I suppose I should have said my name is Séamus Nolan. I'm a Teagasc advisor based in Castlereagh as well, and also we have Donal McCabe, who's going to give a handout with the question and answers side of things. So I suppose we want to start off with Enda. Initially, we'll take questions at the very end after both presentations, and as usual, if you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A box at the bottom, and Donal will deal with those later on. So Enda, I'll ask you to share your screen, and I suppose while Enda is doing that, maybe just a couple of things to bear in mind at the time of the year it is. I suppose we're after having a couple of very bad storms out there, so just for people to be careful out there when they're dealing with fallen trees or anything like that, to be careful of any live wires that might be knocking around the place, but hopefully the ESB have dealt with those at this stage. And also it's a very, very busy time on farms from a health and safety point of view as well, with cows calving, and just bear in mind that there are a lot more people hurt or even worse with cows around calving time than there are at bullseye time and during the year. So please bear that in mind over the next couple of months when people are busy and when you're in close proximity to animals like that. Okay, Enda, you.
Okay. Can you hear me, Shane?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Grand, okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. So look, I'm concentrating on basically the whole story with the fertilizer prices there for 2022. Okay, and my slides are going to be talking about how to make best use of those nutrients, not just in terms of fertilizer, but in terms of slurry as well. Okay, for 2022, because this year is going to be really kind of an exceptional year in the sense that, you know, fertilizer prices have gone through the roof. So look, there needs to be some sort of a plan in place to handle that on every farm as such. So look, this slide, so but just a few quota fertilizer prices that were put together there. So look, you can see everybody probably knows the story of fertilizer. You know, the last 8-10 months, the way the story has deteriorated, such. All right. You can see CAN there, 27% nitrogen back in April 2021. It's coming in at 235. It's now roughly 710. Okay, so it has jumped probably not too far off 3 times the price it was, you know, back in April 2021. Urea 370, and now it's touching 930, 940 a ton. All right. Protected urea is somewhere about 970 a ton, 980, that kind of price. O1020 365. Now selling retailing at 745. You can see your 18612s here, that kind of stuff, and your cut swords. 18612 back in April 21 was 340. It's now 745, and your cut sword 350 back in April 21 is now 815. So really, the prices really have gone out of all control and such. All right. And the indications are these prices will remain at the current levels, all right. You know, fertilizer prices are high because energy prices have gone through the roof, and you know, natural gas is a key ingredient in terms of making nitrogen fertilizers. So that probably has driven the fertilizer. And it's not just nitrogen that's gone expensive; P's and K's have also gone expensive, and there's a whole host of issues or reasons why that has happened. Okay. So look, this is another slide quickly just to show the way how the thing has progressed sort of between February and November of last year. Look, you know, you can see nitrogen was about €1 per kilo, and by November of 21, it was touching so just over €2. Okay, now it's actually it's up here. It's up at 3 roughly. You know, it's about 3 times the price. You know, P's and K's haven't increased as much. Nitrogen has gone up by about 3 times the price. P's and K's have gone up by about 2 on average. Okay, in the past 8 to 10 months or so. This last thing here, this relative value of fertilizers, what that's about, basically we're trying to put a value on fertilizers relative to the average of basically the way this is done is as a list of maybe 40 different fertilizers, and we work out on that list how much every kilogram of N and P and K is worth, right? So and then you compare your fertilizer relative to that as such, just with these figures were attained as such, right? So if we look at CAN there, okay, its relative value is only €602, but it's actually costing 710. So it's not good value there, as you can see. All right, it's costing, you know, it's 710, but it's only actually worth €602. Okay, urea there, it's costing about 930, but it's actually worth 1,025. So that's actually good value, you know. Something like 10, 10, 20 there is coming in at, let's see, 10, 10, 20 here is about 765 retail. It's actually worth 877, so it's actually good value. Same story, 18612, and it's good value as well this year. It's coming in at about 745 retail, but actually worth 793. Okay, the relative value of it. Something like the cut swords and the pasture swords there. There's not much difference in the price of those, but they're coming around 820, 815, and retail they're actually only worth 765. So probably not a great value in them relative to other fertilizers, just because they're probably high in nitrogen. That's probably what's making them not that. And it's mostly can-based fertilizers used to generate that compound. All right. So anyways, that's just a slide there to set the context, the background where fertilizer prices are out and what's good value and what's not good value. So basically, urea is good value, protected urea is good value. Some of your 18612s, your 10, 10, 20s, they seem to be all fairly good value too. All right. Okay. Right, just a few quick slide here on soil sampling. Look, if ever there was a year to soil sampling, this is probably the year to do it. Okay. Look, it's not very expensive to get a few soil samples taken. You get them done for as little as maybe 17, 18 euros each, and then probably the deer will be about 25. So look, they're a small cost, but it does give you a reading there for what the pH, what the lime requirement is like for fields, what the P is like, what the K is like. So we have a good bit of handle on what basic soil fertility is like. Okay. So based on those results, we can sort of target in lime. Now Shane is going to talk a little bit about you about lime, but lime is a really probably the best fertilizer you'll ever get your hands on. Okay, it's costing about 25 euros a ton spread. But if you can if you have the money to do it, this will be a very good year to do it. Like what it will do, it'll probably release something like 60 or 70 kilograms of nitrogen out of that soil for free. When you compare a well lime soil versus one that's very acidic. All right. It'll also kind of identify the fields that are low in P's and K's, and fields that are probably okay for P's and K's, and fields that are high in P's and K's. So look, we can target then where we're going to put our fertilizer, or sort of our slurries and primary manures and such, right? And also then we'll be able to target where we're going to put our chemical fertilizer, given the price of it this year, and how important it is that people have some sort of a plan in their heads where they're going to put this fertilizer. Okay. And likewise, then if some of the results come back at index 4s, I think nationally there's about 20 or something 20% or something like so. It's our index 4. Okay, so if that's a resource that's on your holding there, exploit it. Okay, because basically what index 4 means that there's enough P and K there in the soil. It doesn't need any more. And from an environmental point of view and an economic point of view, it doesn't make any sense to go putting more on it. All right, so it's a resource. Try and exploit it. So this slide here, what we're talking about, why should you use protected urea? Now, we're trying to sell this story of protected urea the last 8 or 10 years now at this stage. So it's still a slow burner with a lot of farmers. Okay, there's no downsides to using protected urea. Okay, and we would like farmers to try and start asking for it. If you don't start asking for it in the merchants and the co-ops, then it'll never actually be a main player or such. So farmers need to start asking for it, right? The reason it's kind of urea and protected urea are why they're so important this year is look, they are good value for money, right? So if you take a ton of, say, protected urea there, 1,000 kilos, that ton has 460 kilograms of nitrogen in it. It's cost about 950, 960 a ton, and that per kilogram of nitrogen that's in that is coming at about 2.06 euros, all right? You contrast that with can. Can would be a big, widely used fertilizers here in Longford and Roscommon. Look, for every ton of can that you buy, you're buying 270 kilograms of nitrogen, costing about 700 euros, and every kilogram of that nitrogen is costing 259 if you use can. So 206 versus 259. Look, it's roughly about 20% cheaper per kilogram of nitrogen to use, say, urea versus can. So that's what that slide is trying to say. So, and we're asking people to switch away from can if they can. Can is a big issue there in terms of what the nitrous oxide it emits, all right? And protected urea doesn't have that issue. And the problem with urea then, of course, is the big ammonia emissions from it. So look, that's why we're asking farmers to use this protected urea if you can. And look, do start asking for it, okay? Another quick slide on protected urea there. Okay, this is a trial that was done down Johnston Castle there, sort of between 2015 and 2021. So what they found out of 6 or 7 years, they found that protected urea, out yielded ordinary urea. Okay, so you can see protected urea here is on this yellow bar. Okay, sorry, the blue bar here. Okay, you can see so this is the ordinary urea then on the straight black line there. So you can see in 6 of those 7 years, it outperformed ordinary urea. Okay. And the red line at the bottom here is just basically what there's no nitrogen used. So this is what the difference between no nitrogen and what sort of urea and protected urea could deliver such. All right. So what that research is kind of saying to us is that, look, if you use protected urea over ordinary urea, you get actually 13% more grass for every ton of sort of protected urea you get, you sort of use, you get actually 13% more grass for when you contrast that then with, say, ordinary urea. So look, it's a more effective source of nitrogen. So you're making better use of the nitrogen in that fertilizer, and there's very little of it getting wafted away as ammonia gas. Okay. So in effect, you could actually potentially reduce the amount of nitrogen, the recommendation by sort of 12 or 13% as well to get the same yield. So look, that's a piece of recent research that was after being done. So look, it's a good news story. So protected urea is there's no problem with it. It out yields urea, and 6 out of 7 years it out yielded urea. And look, the only reason it didn't do it was on 2018, which was kind of a freak year in the sense that we had a very poor spring, and then we had a drought then in the summer months. So basically, that's probably what explains that. Okay, this slide is important. All right. I would suggest that you know, people have in terms of fertilizers this year and slurries, you need to have some bit of a plan in your head how you're going to maximize those nutrients. Okay, whether it's from slurry or from farm revenue, whatever it is. Okay, or fertilizer. So there's kind of 4 key points that farmers should be aware of, all right, when especially this time of the year, or maybe early on the year too, before you go spreading fertilizers. The first thing is, like, grass won't really start growing until soil temperatures are at least 5.5 degrees. Okay, so I just checked my area there too. They're about 7 degrees in Roscommon at the moment there in Mount Dillon, about 7 degrees. Okay, so that we're ticking that box there at the moment. So okay, we're fine there. Field conditions at the moment, like in the last week, we've had a really poor week. Okay, so soils are waterlogged. So the soil moisture deficit is probably a negative at the moment. Maybe some of the drier soils would dry out. Okay, but probably not a good idea to go spreading fertilizer this week, given the the forecast is not great. All right. The third point here is the weekly forecast as well. You need to have at least 2 or 3 days dry if you can after spreading it. Okay, so do keep an eye on the forecast there when you're going out, because it's important so that when we put out the fertilizer, it's dry and it gets a chance to absorb into the soil as such. Okay, and the last point there is important too. Like, our specialists are kind of saying that you should have at least 10 kilograms of grass growth per day, you know, before you actually get any real response to the chemical fertilizer you put out, or any fertilizer you put out, or such, right, whether organic or chemical. Grass growth rates there last week, I just looked on pasture base there before I came on, were about 9 kilograms. Okay, in Connacht there, right. Now the projection for next week is 15. Okay, but look, from now on, really, you know, grass growth rates are going to improve. The days are getting longer. There's more strength in the sun, so really, and soils are beginning to warm up. So from now on, we can expect, you know, fairly good responses to the nitrogen that we put out, whether that's in the bag or whether it's in slurry. Okay, but if I was talking to you maybe a month ago, you know, you'd be questioning whether going out with early applications of fertilizers, you know, or maybe even slurries, because you're not getting a great response to that nitrogen that you're putting out. And given the year that we have and the cost of it, and how important it is to hold on to all these nutrients and get the best response from them, you know, you'd be questioning should you actually be going out maybe, you know, earlier, say in late April or even early February. Okay, because look, the grass isn't growing. You know, there's no point putting out fertilizer if the grass isn't going to be able to grow and respond to it. All right. The other thing we're trying to push here too, the last couple of years too, is trying to get more farmers using the low emissions slurry spreading technology. All right. I think a lot of farmers that are using it have embraced it and are happy that, and would never go back to using splash plates. But we need to get more farmers using it, and this year probably more so than other years, it's important to start using it, in the sense that, look, this point down here, you do get better recovery of the nitrogen in that slurry if you use low emissions equipment versus splash plate. And I think most farmers realize that at this stage. All right. So the other thing, so what low emission slurry do is it basically, it reduces your nitrogen losses. So we're reducing the ammonia losses by dramatically. Okay, with a huge reduction in the amount of ammonia that's lost from slurry when you use low emissions equipment versus splash plate. and we're getting an extra 3 units per 1,000 gallons of slurry that we spread. So, and look, it is the #1 technology we have out there to try and reduce ammonia emissions. Because remember, we do have these this ammonia emissions target to reduce as well. Okay. Look, people are aware that there's no odors or smells from it. Okay, or there's some, but they're hugely reduced when you compare it, say, to your splash plate. So it does reduce the air pollution as such. Okay. The other good thing about it is, and the kind of European people would have, in other European countries would have spotted this maybe back 20, 30 years ago. You are, putting in the slurry directly in that, when you're using, say, your trailing shoe there, or you're injecting, you're putting it actually into the soil directly where the actually plant needs it as such. Okay, same with the dribble bar. So it's a precision application of slurry. So you can see it's a very uniform way of applying slurry. So you're putting it right down where the plant really needs it at the soil surface as such. Okay. The other advantage of it too, of course, is that we can actually go into heavier grass covers with it. Okay, something you can't really do with splash plate, because you're not marking all the sward. You're only leaving sort of lines of slurry along the field. So you can actually go into heavier grass covers with it. So that means we can basically go into better, when we do that. We can go into heavier grass covers. Soil conditions are probably better, and we have more scope to go on the field, as such. We're not going to do as much damage if we're going into heavier covers, say, than what might be there earlier on the season. So as such, then we're having a wider window of application as such, right? So you can't really go on into heavy covers with splash plates, because look, you're going to you're going to spoil the grass from a grazing point of view. Okay. So look, we would be asking farmers there this year, and contractors, to try and do their best to try and promote the use of low emissions equipment for 2022. So every farmer could try and do it if they can at all. And it's a key technology we have there to reduce ammonia emissions, and also kind of our climate change commitments as well. Okay. So there's our NPK value. Okay, our cattle slurry. Right. So basically, what's going on here? So basically, we're trying to work out what is actually in our 1,000 gallons of slurry. Okay. So basically, it all depends really on the dry matter of the slurry. Okay. So these are average figures that Teagasc would have put together based on years and years of research. What we're saying, the average slurry that you're going to get out there, okay, has about 9 units of nitrogen in it, 5 units of P, and 32 units of K in it. Right. So you can basically think about it as a bag of fertilizer or such. All right. So every 1,000 gallons has 9 is 9, 5, 32. You can just, that's just a round figure that you can have in your head there. Every farm is different. So I suppose if you go into some of the dairy farmers, there'll be a lot of wash down water from parlours and dairies and all that kind of stuff, and milk parlours, collecting yards. So that probably might dilute the slurry down a little bit. So if it's more dilute, then obviously, the nutrients become more dilute also. So the N, the P, and the K are also more dilute. I suppose the only good side about that is, in terms of nitrogen, the nitrogen use efficiency of more is better with the more dilute slurry, actually, believe it or not. So the more diluted is, the better we get, the better utilization we get of that nitrogen slurry. So look, the point here we're trying to make is there's a huge variation out on farms there in terms of what the dry matter, what actually is in your slurry, what's the NP and K status of that slurry. I've kind of mentioned there about the effect of diluting down the slurry. So look, the point we're trying to make here too is try and test it if you can. I'm not saying everybody won't be able to do it, but look, if you could get your slurry tested, and look, basically it needs to be done after what I would say that the slurry is agitated. Now, obviously, health and safety would have to come into account here, and be very careful when you're agitating and that stuff, and actually when you're extracting the sample. You probably need about 1 litre of slurry to send it off to the lab. Okay. And so basically, once you get your results back, you'll have a very good handle on what your slurry is like, what's NP and K status, all right? And from that, then you can make informed decisions in terms of how much fertilizers you need to make up the shortfall as such. Okay. The next thing I want to talk to you there, this next slide here, what we're looking at here is, where should we spread the slurry? Okay. So where can I best maximize the value of my slurry nutrients? What fields am I going to go out? Am I going on silage fields, grazing fields, whatever? How do I know where's the best place to place it? Okay. So if you take a look at this pie chart here on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see that about 70% of the nutrients in slurry is actually potash, and 10% are phosphorus. So about 80% of cattle slurry is P and K, and about 20% then is actually nitrogen. All right. So look, then the next question you ask then is, what does the crop P and K needs? So look, that's why we take soil samples, so we know what the status of our soils, what are they like for P and K. Okay. Every farmer this year, I think, should have some sort of a fertilizer plan in place. There's some sort of an idea in their head how they're going to manage fertilizers this year. Because, you know, if you don't make any changes, if you keep the same number of stock as you have every other year, and every other year you've bought fertilizer to grow your silage or to push on your grazed grass, you know, you're probably, if you make no changes, you're still going to need to buy fertilizer. Like some farmers are saying that they won't buy fertilizer, but look, that's a fool's game. You will need to buy fertilizer to grow your silage, to grow your grass, and always remember that grazed grass and growing your own silage is the cheapest way to do that, as opposed to buying silage or buying meal. Okay, so always keep that to the back of your mind. In terms of where you put it, look, around here, I think it's very important that every farmer should target their silage fields first, okay, because that's where the crop is grown the previous year. So all you're doing is you're cycling those nutrients back onto that silage field, okay. That's the first and most important thing, all right. So every farmer should aim to have enough slurry to grow to put back on his silage crop, or for first cut silage. If you have any left over, then maybe start targeting the low index fields, index 1 and 2 fields. These are the hungry fields that are really low in P and K. They should get it next. But target your silage ground first. And if you have anything left over, then you start looking at your low P and K fields then on your farm. Now look, the slurry it's very balanced, okay, because it came from the fields the previous year. It has the right ratio of P and K on it, okay. So look, it is a balanced fertilizer, and it's probably ideal for growing a crop of silage, okay. And again, you need to adjust your slurry application rate based on the dry matter slurry. So if it's a more dilute slurry, then you probably need to increase the application rate. Right, okay. This slide here talking about the P and K advice, basically for grazing situations on farms, okay. So look, this year, what we're asking farmers to do is just apply P index 3 rates. This is not a year to be building up reserves of P and K in soils, but just it's too expensive. All right, so this, look, we're just applying maintenance levels out. So we're just putting back in what the actual animal and let's say the sheep and the cow take out, okay, in terms of produce or weight gain. All right, so that's an important point. So we're really putting back index 3 levels of P and K this year in 2022, because it's just too costly. So look, if you take a look here, the stocking rate, so we have a big range of stocking here. So, you know, the more extensive guys stocked at 1 to 1.5 livestock units per hectare, right up to guys stocked at 2.5 to 3 livestock units per hectare. Okay, so look, it's index 3 we're looking at here. So it's 6 units of P and 8 units of K. So basically 1 bag of 8612 will suffice there. Okay, so after that, then if you want to grow more grass, then it's nitrogen. After that, if you need to grow more grass, we go up to the other end of the scale here for a guy that's intensively stocked. Yeah, because he's obviously there's more animals on the farm. There's more weight gain. There's more being taken off the farm. So look, he should be putting out 2 bags of NCS12 this year. Okay, all right, and then after that, then it's just nitrogen then to grow on the grass. Okay, so look, points here is it's index 3 we're looking at here this year. So it's just maintenance levels to put back what the production takes off. Okay. If you have high index 3 soils there, look, you can reduce it by 50%. So let's just say you had a high index soil here. So instead of going with 1 bag, you might need to only go with a half bag. That's what we're saying there. Or above at the other end of the scale, if you had high index 3 soils, you might only go with 1 bag there of 8612. Okay. Lowly stock farms or farms that have a low grass demand, look, absolutely, you probably should. These are farms now that have probably too much grass and top grass to control as such. You cannot omit P and K for 1 year there, and that's fine for this year, you know, and just work on nitrogen only. But if you do that, you resample there early into 2023 to see where your P's and K's are at. All right. Again, I've mentioned it here. Depending on your stock, you're obviously, if you're lowly stocked, you're not going to need a whole pile of nitrogen. If you're stocked up at 2.5 or 3 livestock units, then you're going to need more nitrogen to grow your grass. The other thing, last point here that farmers need to remember too is sulfur. It's a thing that's probably forgotten a little bit around in the West of Ireland. But look, research will tend to suggest that if you do put out sulfur there, somewhere about 10 units say per silage cut, or maybe 10 units per year on the grazing land, that there is a bit of a response to that. Okay, certainly a response on lighter soils, but look, it doesn't cost anything else to add it in. So look, if you are buying fertilizer, whether that be 18612 or protected urea, whatever it is, don't forget to ask for a compound that has sulfur on it, because it has research has shown that there is a bit of a yield advantage to putting it in. Look, next slide here is about grass silage. Look, the big concern I have there this year is that farmers make enough silage. What you don't want is come for the 1st of November next year, sorry, 1st of October next year, and let's just say you normally need 200 bales of silage and you're down at 150. So you're down 50 bales. So what are you going to do? Like, obviously the grazing season is over. So don't find yourself in that situation, you know, because growing your own silage, grass silage is costing somewhere about 22, 23 kilograms, 22, 23 cent per kilogram of dry matter. Okay. Farmers think that they'll substitute meal for that shortfall, but meal is costing, you know, a ton of meal is 350, 360, 370. That's 35, 36, 37 cent per kilogram of dry matter. So look, that's really expensive, all right? So always remember that grazed grass and growing your own silage is the cheapest way to grow enough forage for yourself for the year. So don't fall into the trap that, oh, I'm going to buy silage. The chances are to buy silage this year is going to be, we don't know what it's like, but you can really guarantee that it's going to be way dearer than other years, all right? Because it probably won't be in the country. But look, grow enough silage for yourself and grow enough grass for yourself. They're the key takeaway points I would make from tonight's presentation here. Look, in terms of silage, this is the advice here. Again, we're only asking farmers to put back what the crop takes out. So it's index 3 levels again, okay? So the advice here for first cut silage is about 100 kilograms, about 80 units of nitrogen. That's about 16 units of P and somewhere about 100 units of potash for first cut silage, okay? So that's what the crop needs to grow. So basically, if you apply a good level of, say, 3,000 gallons, that's about 3,000 gallons of cattle slurry, which are low emissions equipment, that will provide the majority of P's and K's for that crop. So after that, all you really need then is just nitrogen, and the nitrogen of choice that we're asking farmers to use is, say, protected urea with sulfur in it. Okay, that's 38% N plus some sulfur. Okay. The other thing to note here, I suppose, especially in the north of the county here where we are in Roscommon, you know, you might have farmers making silage on very low index soils, and typically that slurry then would be really low in phosphorus as well. So maybe it might be no harm then, you know, just maybe to use something like cut sward in there, just to supply a little bit of P and K there, which would be important as well. Okay, especially, so that's really in soils that are really low in P's and K's. So just apply a little bit of P and K to that, just to boost it on a little bit. In the case there, if you don't have any slurry and your fertilizers only, so look, maybe use something like that 13-6-20, something like that, at about maybe 3 or 3.5 bags per acre, and make up the shortfall then with urea, protected urea, whatever. Okay, so that should do there. Okay, so that's that. So look, in summary there, look, soil tests there. If you're a farmer there, every farmer that's probably on the call here tonight has ground that they push. They have silage fields they want good yields of silage off. They have pasture fields here that are good fields that are good yielders of grass. Those kind of fields should have a soil test done. If you have ground that you really don't push and you know, you're probably never gets fertilized, well, there's not much point in soil testing that, all right, okay, because you're not going to put anything on it. But look, for the rest of you there, you know, if you have grounds that you push, take a soil sample out of it, okay? Second point here is talk to your advisor, absolutely talk to your advisor, but have some plan in place how you're going to handle fertilizer prices this year, because as you can see, like, fertilizer prices are about 2.5 times on average what they were a year ago. The other point there is an environmental one, and also an economic one. Is you know, we're asking farmers to maybe just delay putting out fertilizers and slurries maybe early on in the season, maybe in late January, early February, because look, the grass isn't really grown and has no capacity to respond to that fertilizer, and so that's so from now on, basically, you know, we are expecting conditions to improve, days getting longer, and we're getting a better response to those fertilizers. Again, we're asking farmers again, not just for the protected year, but also start using low emission slurry spreading equipment. It's going to help us in terms of meeting our commitments in terms of reducing ammonia and reducing our climate change emissions on farms. Okay, and look, that point is, I've made it before, is very important. Make sure you keep enough slurry to cover all your silage fields. If you have anything left over, then you can target your low index fields. Okay, and last slide then is this kind of a resource that's been put up on the public website there in the past few weeks or month or so. Look, you'll find it under this heading, on the public website under crops and soil fertility. There's about 20 different fact sheets that farmers can use to go in and look about soil sampling or liming or organic manures, whatever. So it's there, and farmers should go in and look at it. It's a word of advice and good information inside of that in that website there. So that's me finished there, Shane.
Thanks for that, Enda. Right, I'll ask Shane maybe to get set up there. Just while Shane is setting up there, Enda, have you any idea what it costs to get a slurry sample tested?
Yeah, look, it's probably somewhere in the region of between 50 and 100 euros. Okay, and look, I think any of the labs really that do the soil samples or any of the agricultural labs should be able to do that for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's somewhere in the region between 50 and 100 euros, give or take.
Okay, that's grand. Thanks, Enda.
Okay.
Shane, can you, is that shared there?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, folks, thank you for joining the webinar. I'm going to talk about soil pH and the liming of your farm. So I suppose the first thing is, you're looking at what Enda's talked about there in relation to the stories of the fertilizers. I suppose there's not much point applying a lot of the nutrients if your pH and your lime levels aren't right in the farm to get the most out of them. So look, the first thing obviously you have to do is do your soil sampling and see what the nutrient status of the farm is. Next step would be to take a look at getting the lime out of the farm. And then all the other things fall into place after that. Now, when it comes to basically what causes acidity in your soils, like the first thing and the most obvious one here is rainfall. It's very, very acidic. We have a lot of rainfall in the west of Ireland, and basically you look at soils are getting saturated, especially this time of the year, so it's causing a lot of acidity. Second thing you can look at there is your nitrogen fertilizers. They have a natural effect of making the soils more acidic as well. You're looking at, there's a certain amount of nutrients taken out of the soil. So when you lime your land, a certain amount of that is taken back up through the roots of the plant. And the last one there is you're looking at is a takeoff by your livestock. Now this slide here, to me, if you remember anything from my presentation here at the moment, remember this slide. It shows here you got a clover plant on the left. It comes from a soil that's well limed. You can see there's a soil pH 6.3. That's where you want to get to. And on the right, you have a soil that is very acidic and a soil pH 5.5. You can see the difference there in your root structure on the one on the left. So far bigger roots, you have to absorb a lot more nutrients from the soil, leading to a bigger clover leaf. Where you see on the right, your roots are underdeveloped and the leaves produced are also a lot smaller than what's on the left hand side of the screen. So that to me sells the value of having your soils properly limed, because it's going to lead to a lot more better absorption of whatever nutrients are available in the soil. That bigger root is going to take up a lot more than the one on the right. Now this slide here emphasizes the point, I suppose, when it comes to you can see here, you got your grass plant and you got your roots underneath it here. I just want to hold on to this pointer options. So what you're going to see here now is, what's next? Hold on. Just bear with me for a minute now. Just get the pointer on there. So I'm going to move on this slide. So what you have here, this is an acidic soil, right? So you have your iron and you got your aluminium here, and then you got your, these are very available in your acidic soils. Then you got your P here. This is here in the yellow. This is your phosphorus, right? And this is available in the soil as well. But what's happening here is, you'll see, is your iron and your aluminium is competing with the root of your grass plant for that phosphorus. So a lot of this, in these acidic soils, a lot of that phosphorus is getting locked up with your iron and your aluminium. And the plant is getting to absorb very little of that. Now, when you go out your fertilizer spreader, your bag of 10-10-20, your bag of 86-12, or your bag of nitrogen, this is what happens, right? And this really emphasizes the point. You're throwing out all this fertilizer, it's all going down into the soil, and there's a very small percentage of that getting absorbed up with the plant in that acidic soil. So if you're putting out your bag of 86-12 or your bag of 10-10-20, you might only be getting to the plant, I suppose, only getting to use a very small percentage of that, maybe a third or less. You don't know how much of that P or that N or K that plant is going to absorb in the acidic soil. So a lot is getting locked up in the soils here. So that slide again really emphasizes the point of acidic soils, really, a lot of these nutrients aren't available. Now we're going to look at the soil pH in the Lime Advice. So this graph here basically shows a soil that has a pH of 5.6 starting off. That's an acidic soil. And when you put out the required amount of lime, it goes from this pH of 5.6 after. See, people ask the question, I suppose, how quick does it take the lime to work and how long does it work for? So you here at the bottom, you're here from 6 months up to 5 years, because there's 60 months. So within 6 months, that pH, you can see here, 6 months has gone up to 5.8. Within a year, it's up to where its target should be around 6.3, 6.2. So within a year, the pH of that soil is back up to where you want. It's working within 6 months, but it's rising all the way. And for the following 2 years after that, up to around 2.5 years, the pH gone up to 6.4, 6.5. So it's working the whole way up there. And then there's a gradual decline over the next couple of years. So when you get your proper lime application requirements applied to your fields, it should last for about 4 to 5 years, depending on the type of soil. Now, sometimes it's recommended to come in maybe after year 3 or 4 to see what the fertility is, but you can see your lime does start to work fairly quickly, so it does. So I suppose the message I'd say to people with the cost of fertilizer you see in this presentation, if ground conditions improve and weather improves and it allows, get out the lime as early as possible, especially on your grazing ground, because you will see it working within a few months. Now, this slide here, again, emphasizes the point of, I suppose, these are your nutrients that you want, you're applying to your soil, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and so on, right? At the top here, you see your pH, right? So the pH here, a lot of soils we define are 5.5, which means they're very acidic. We want to get up to between the 6 and 6.5. Now, what this slide is emphasizing here is at a pH of 5.5, you see your nitrogen. It's not that available at that pH of 5.5. There's less available than there is at the pH between 6 and 6.5. You see your phosphorus, there's very little available down at that pH of 5.5. Potassium is reduced, so is your sulfur, so are the rest below it. And these ones then underneath the ones you don't want, some of them here you don't want, a lot of them are very available, which causes an issue with locking up P's and nitrogen and so on in the soil. So this, I suppose, slide really emphasizes that this pH between 6 and 6.5, you're getting the full use of your nitrogen from your slurries and your P's and also from your bags of fertilizer. So that pH is 6.5, you should be getting 100% availability of all the nutrients that you're applying. But at these 5.5s, that's not happening. Now, one thing you probably would have heard over the years is that lime increases the availability of nitrogen in the soil. So a lot of nitrogen, as emphasized earlier, would be locked up in the soil. You apply your lime, it has potential to release up to 80 kilos per hectare per year, equivalent of around 60 units, right? What that does, obviously, will reduce the nitrogen requirements on the farm. And if you want to put that into the terms of bags of fertilizer and the prices in to show there you're on, it'll take the equivalent of 1.4 bags of urea to do the same thing, which is 65 euros an acre. And it'll take 2.5 bags of can to do the same thing, which is around 90 euros an acre. You apply 2 tons of lime, you're looking at around 50 euros an acre. And not alone is it unlocking your nitrogen, but it's unlocking the P's and the K's, and it's increasing, see, this earthworm activity, your drainage, all of that in your soil. So the value of lime this year is, compared to your fertilizers, it is the best value out there. And I suppose if you want to make a saving on, I suppose, fertilizers on the grazing ground, target getting it out on your grazing ground as early as possible. And you might you might go the whole year, might not having to apply a bag of fertilizer at all, or you'll definitely reduce what you normally would apply. So this year is the year to get the lime out whenever you get the chance. So what's the return? We look at what's the financial return on it. Now this here, if you look, what you want to concentrate on here is basically, this is a trial done on the application of lime to ground. Look, there's different applications done here. They applied the one in yellow. There was nothing applied, no fertilizer, no lime. The purple here applied lime on its own only. In the red here, they applied just phosphorus, chemical phosphorus, and then over here they applied the phosphorus and the lime. Now, what this here is, you're looking at 9.6 tons per hectare where there's no fertilizer applied. So that's no lime applied. So that's what should naturally grow, 9.6 tons, right? I suppose a lot of dry stock farms who dealers will be growing that and probably less. So when you apply the lime on its own, you grew an extra ton of dry matter of grass per hectare, right? That's the equivalent of an extra 2 to 3 bales per hectare, or a bale per acre. Just think of that. So from applying lime alone, it's equivalent of nearly a bale of silage extra per acre by doing that. Then by applying the phosphorus, it was something similar, but at a lot higher cost, the phosphorus. So again, emphasizing the point, get the lime out and you will see a reaction to growing more grass. When you get into the late spring, early summer, it'll have a huge impact on what you're growing. So if you want to put that into a money terms, you're really looking there at around the goods of 70 to 100 euros per hectare. That's what's working in grass terms, right? So definitely very, very good value. See these pHs here, that was a pH of 5.2, and when you put the lime out, you get up to your target of 6.4. Now, your sources of lime, there's 3 of them you can look at. There's the ground limestone, which most people will apply. You have your magnesium limestone, which isn't that readily available in these parts. It's more available down in the southeast. I think maybe over in King's Court and Gahavna might be available over there. The advantage of the magnesium limestone versus the ordinary ground limestone is that it's probably, I suppose, slower to react. So it's basically lasting longer. And if there's an issue, I suppose, with magnesium deficiency, which leading to technical problems on the farm, it can help to improve the problems associated with that. The third option there is, which some people use, is the granulated lime products, which comes in the ordinary bag. And that, I suppose, is very quick acting. People do find there's a good response for it. But when you're looking at these, I suppose what you're really looking at here is the cost. When you route to ground limestone, you can look in there, look at 5 tons per hectare, which is 2 tons per acre. Look at that last, once you get your ground up to where it should be, up to the pH, usually 2 tons per acre should last roughly over 5 years. That's around 10 euros per acre, right? If you're going out with the granulated lime, you have to apply the exact same rate. So if you have to apply 5 tons per hectare of ordinary ground limestone, you have to apply 5 tons per hectare of the granulated lime. It's like for like. Problem with granulated lime, it's 160 euros a ton per hectare, or 65 euros per acre. So 6.5 times more expensive than your ordinary lime. And from a value point of view, look, there's no comparison. And once you get your pH built up to where you want them to be, as the maintenance then, it's a 3:1 you're looking at. So for every 3 tons of this brown limestone you're applying per hectare, you're looking at 1 ton of the granulated lime, of the gran lime, and that's double the cost. So really, I suppose I'd emphasize to people, because I have people who would be inclined to use this granulated lime. It's a bit like fertilizer. You apply it, you get a bit of a quick reaction, and the next year you're back to square one if you apply it again. And it is but now your ground limestone, you're getting a reaction over the 4 or 5 years as shown earlier on. So far better value than that. And when you look at what's in them, on your ground limestone, for every ton you apply, there's a third of that which is quick acting. It's your finely ground, the limestone is quick acting, which is the same as your granulated lime. So 1/3 of that, 300 and for every ton, 350 kilos of that, which is basically the same as granulated lime. And then there's the other 2/3 then is your bigger granule, which you see in the ground, which works over a longer period of a couple of years. You go to the granulated, you look on there, look at it is quick acting, get a good quick response. It's 100% available to the plant straight away. But don't forget, of the ground limestone, there's a third of that 100% available straight away too. But the cost of this, look at it, 6.5 times more expensive, as already mentioned. Where might you use it? Look, if you're doing reseeding maybe a couple of acres, you could go in maybe and spread it on a couple of acres of ground. Might be a place to use it. Con acre, look, depending on maybe getting a bit of silage off that, but value-wise, I don't think there's much place for using the granulated lime. You're looking from a money point of view.
Shane, just a couple of minutes, okay?
What's wrong, Séamus?
Just a couple of minutes left.
Oh, left. Okay, sorry, Séamus. Okay.
So,
lime in the grass. So look at on this then, I just got to go through these. Look at 2 ton. If there's anything over 2 ton per acre for lime, look, split it 50% now. You know this. I didn't go out in 2 years with the remainder. Look, lime again. People ask you when can you spread it? You can spread it any time of the year. Any time from look, as long as ground conditions allow. The only thing I'd say about it is on silage ground, don't apply it before the silage is cut, because it can stay stuck to the leaf of the grass, mightn't be properly washed off, and could cause problems with the fermentation of your silage because it interferes with the sugars and acids. So don't apply it basically to silage ground until it's cut. On your local heavy wet soils, the little and often approach would be advised. That would mean maybe going out maybe a ton and a half per acre, if you can get the contract to do that, and do it every year. If you go out too much, as people would have found out, it makes the ground very tender for a period of time after. Molybdenum can be an issue with lime and soil. So look, I suppose the advice on molybdenum will be, is some people would say reduce the amount of lime. What we'd recommend will be without the correct amount of lime, don't worry about that, but come in with your copper supplementation. And I know they would have done this on the Better Farm program, where they would have used copper supplementation where it was an issue and they had no animal health problems. So don't worry, just come in. Look, I'll always consult your vet on it. It'll never be a bad thing to do, but come in with your, go with whatever the advice is in the lime and come in with copper supplementation. Look, just here's a graph here just showing you lime from 1970 up to 2017. From the early 70s up to the mid 80s, there was 1.5 to 2 million tons of lime been applied. From the mid 80s on to now, it's back down to less than 1 million. So if we want to get our lime pH is back up to where they should be, you need to get back up to this 1.5 to 2 million tons an acre. That's where we need to get back to. Final slide. Look, this tells the story. On the left, you got your acidic soil, pH 5, no grass in the field, sort of black clouds overhead, so you don't want to be in that scenario. On the right, properly limed soil, 6.3, lots of grass, and I suppose the sun tells the story, far happier situation to be in. So look, I hope you got something from the presentation, and I suppose my advice this year, lime compared to your fertilizers is really, really good value. So look at that options if you can, and thank you for your time.
Thanks a million, Shane. Sorry for giving you the nudge on there.
You're all right, Jamie. You're okay. We got to the bin
Yeah.
end of it, so look.
A good few questions coming in now, so we'll go straight over to Donal now to dish them out. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. There's surely lots of questions coming in, which is good to see. So we'll get straight into them. So Enda, I'll come to you first. There's lots of questions, I suppose. People even looking for specific advice, which is, I suppose, it's hard to give, because naturally enough, there's lots of different farm situations out there. But we'll just go through one or two of them. Will I get away with just using straight nitrogen for silage this year? And then they're suggesting themselves that potentially they could go out with maybe compound fertilizer later in the year if fertilizer prices came back.
So the question is if to use straight nitrogen for silage only. Look, if he has slurry, okay, and he gives a good coat of slurry on say, let's just say he's aiming for first cut.
Enda, just put down your mic to your face there, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So basically, let's just say he's aiming for first cut silage, okay, all right, and he has slurry, all right, and let's just say he gives a good coat of slurry, say 3,000 gallons to that crop, say whatever in early April, all right. Yeah, look, that should supply enough P and K to grow the crop, all right. And after that, then probably nitrogen, yeah, provided he puts out enough nitrogen, say, let's say if it's an old sport, maybe about no more than 70 units, or maybe 75 max on an old sport, or maybe if it's a kind of a reseeded one, it has more scope to take a bit of nitrogen, all right. Yeah, but look, yeah, you could get away this year, right? But it's based on the premise that you give it a good coat of slurry, all right, okay. So that's what I'd say.
That's okay. Just related to that, just when the comment came in as well, the situation where there's high P index and K index soils, dry farm but no slurry.
So look, if it's a silage situation, if it's index 4s, basically that's a resource you can exploit it. You don't need any more P's or K's if you have index 4 soils, so it's just straight nitrogen in that case. If it's index 3s and they're sort of low index 3s, then yes, you would be putting out something like 18612 on it. All right, yeah. Probably better to go with 18612 maybe in March and April, because that's probably where the better demand the better demand is, the higher demand for phosphorus is. When the crop really starts moving, there's a demand for phosphorus there at that time of the year. Earlier on the season, we're moving on now. We're nearly in the 1st of March now at this stage. So look, yeah, probably 18612 will probably be the best choice to go with for your application first round, I would say.
Okay. Have it. And so that links in with another question, just yes, in terms of the timing of can fertilizer and compound fertilizers to get the best out of them. Would you be going early March, end of March, or leave it for April? So compounds and can.
For those that are kind of intensively stocked, the sort of the recommendation would be for maybe straight nitrogen first round of application. All right, okay. That's ideally be using protected urea if you get your hands on it, maybe half a bag or something like that per acre. And once we start moving into sort of March and April, yeah, the plant needs phosphorus at that stage, all right, to grow. So maybe then it's the time to start using your compounds, your 8612 and your whatever compound you're using, but yeah, certainly with P's and K's in March and April.
Okay, I'll just ask you one more, Enda, before I jump over to Shane. Now I know Teagasc have no direct involvement in this, but maybe you may have heard something. There's a good few questions in regards to the soil sampling scheme, the Department of Agriculture soil sampling scheme. Yes. A lot of farmers waiting to get samples taken, or those maybe some that have samples taken a while and are waiting on results. Do you have any update in regards to that?
I haven't. The only word I did hear in the grapevine that probably that results could take the guts of 4 months to come back, a really long time. So in terms of if you're thinking about using those as some sort of guidance for yourself this spring, then I don't think they're going to be of any much use to you, unfortunately. But I think that's what I'm hearing. In a lot of cases, they're only just after being taken, and in some cases, they're not even taken yet. So look, you don't expect those back in a hurry is what I'd be inclined to say. Look, at the end of the day, it's not a really huge cost to take a soil sample. As I said, you can get them done for as little as 16, 17 euros. The only word of caution I would say about taking soil samples at the moment is if there's any slurry or fertilizer gone out Peter Kay has gone out, then look, you're past the point of taking them, because it's we need 3 months there, between the time the fertilizer went out and the sample was taken, or Slurry, whatever.
Okay, that's grand. Shane, just a comment / question in here in regards to a person with heavy clay ground. And I know you kind of did touch on this, but maybe just to elaborate on it slightly more. Heavy clay ground, they're not willing to put out lime because I think that will make the ground too tender. Now that's their perception. They haven't said that they've applied lime recently. Have you any comment in regard to that?
Yeah, look, it's hard to disagree with them in one way, Donal. Look, I declined to, in a few years ago, I was in a similar position, put it out in a wet July, August, I think it was in 2017, before the drought in 18. Again, I was pushed a lime campaign in 18 to put out lime. He was not inclined to put it out because he says it made the ground very tender. So anyways, look, we went out again with it in 18 in drier conditions, would applied it. What I found out, he probably applied about 3 tons an acre. Right, that was the first problem. So he put out way too much lime. So my advice to that man there would be, if you can get your contractor to apply 1 ton per acre, get it out. If you can get a dry spell in the summer, good dry spell, get it out in dry conditions, you should not have that issue. 1 to 1.5 tons per acre. Now you're going out and there's a lot of rain going to come, if you're going out in wettish weather and that, or it probably is going to make it a bit tender, but try and get the timing right with it, and that 1.5 tons per acre should be okay.
Okay, that's fine. And just linked to that as well, another question in regards to the effect that lime may have on rush control.
Lime will look at rush control is if you want to get the rushes under control, there's a few different things you have to do to try and get that to work. So obviously you need to get the grass to compete with the rush is the first thing, right? So if you have a very low fertility in your soil, and grass isn't growing that well, the rush is going to grow very well. And rush will even grow sometimes in good land, you'll see, where fertility is a problem, or there's a bit of compaction. So definitely putting out lime is going to grow more grass, which will help in keeping the rushes under control. But look, you're also looking at improving your P's and your K's, and might need to be a drainage issue to be looked at in some scenarios there as well. But
Okay.
it will help, definitely will help it, yeah.
That's fine. Just the way the questions are coming in, Enda, I'll come back to you here. In terms of just one of your slides, where you made reference, I suppose, to the amount of fertilizer that you'd need to replace offtakes. You talked about bags, and just clarification sought there. Is that bags per acre or bags per hectare?
They're bags per acre. Bags per acre, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And if you have them just open there in front of you, or if you remember them, I know you went through them, but there's a couple of questions in regards to the price of can, 10, 10, 20 and 18, 6, 12. Could you
have a few figures here in front of me. So can, I just priced it today in Arrivo locally. Can is coming in at 720. 18, 6, 12 is coming in about 770. 10, 10, 20 price 790 was quoted today for that. Protected urea is coming in at 970 and has to be ordered a month in advance. So if you want protected urea, say, let's just say whatever it is, the 21st of February. So the earliest you get that probably is 21st of March. So just bear that in mind. So and then your cut sward and pasture swards are coming in about 840. That's what they're making this year,
Okay. And just a few questions in regards to the dribble bar and trail and shoe. The difference in regards to, well, number one, I suppose there is a question asking, are they still grant aided?
Yes, they are 100 times, yeah, 40% or 60% if you're a young farmer.
And the difference between them in terms of providing nutrients to the sward?
Look, I suppose the trail and shoe might be very slightly more efficient than the dribble bar, but it's totally insignificant, in terms of nutrient value. But yeah, look, dribble bar, trail and shoe, injection, they're all kind of more or less the same, given the same nutrient value for slurries when they're applied using that technology.
Does slurry have to be much more watery to go through the dribble bar?
It ideally, look, probably the more diluted it is, the easier it will flow through the pipes and stuff. it doesn't have to be very dilute, but obviously the more dilute it is, the better it will flow. Yeah, and less problems with spreading. Yeah.
Okay, Shane, just going back to the lime, a question here on lime and grazing. How long do you have to wait before you graze the ground after liming it?
Look, there's a lot of people that ask the question when there's a lot of grass, do you allow the lime and cause scouring and cattle and that. So the advice we'd always give there would be is, look, get the lime out. You might have it on the grass for a couple of days afterwards. If you get a very dry spell, look, might be a little bit more prolonged, but if you get a shower of rain, it's going to wash off a lot of that. So there's no issue really with taking cattle off. They might be that mad to eat for a couple of days. But there'll be no issue in having to take them off, you know. And look, you usually don't have to wait that long for a bit of rain to come to wash it off, you know. So
if lime stuck to the grass, would it have any negative effect on cattle or sheep if they did eat grass with lime that was stuck to it?
no, some people think it makes them scoury. Look, it's not into if you get a very watery wet grass, it'll be scouring after as well. So to me, it's no reason not to apply lime, and the benefits that you get out of lime. Like if you're waiting for, you know, different reasons why not to apply it, you'll never put it out. So basically, when the weather is with you and ground conditions are with you, go with it. Just be wary where there is, if you're putting out lime, so one thing I didn't mention was, if you put out slurry on top of that lime within 3 months of that, or urea, you're going to lose the benefits of the nitrogen in it. Just keep that in mind.
Perfect. That was another question I had for you, Shane. So with slurry and lime, just to reiterate, slurry first, then lime?
Slurry first, only give it a couple of weeks to break down into the soil, and then go with your lime. Or if you have gone with lime already, don't go with urea or slurry within 3 months of that. If you want to get this year, above all years, you want to get the value of the nitrogen in that slurry. So hold off for 3 months or go somewhere else in the farm with that slurry.
Okay, and I know you did touch on this, but just the question came in on it again. Advice in regards to timing of lime on silage ground?
Silage ground, wait until it's cut. As mentioned earlier, there is an issue again. It could be still parts of it stuck, you know, contaminated, or the grass or stuck onto the grass, which will interfere with the sugars and acids in that grass when it's been siled, and so it can lead to poor quality silage.
Okay.
So wait till after it's cut and go out there.
That's fine. Good few questions here, but I think, Shane, we're nearly through most of them. There's just, and I'll just go back to you. There's just one or two here. What's the situation about spreading urea when nights are frosty?
Well, sure. Look, if it's very frosty, you know, probably not the best. If ground is frosty, you know, we shouldn't be really spreading fertilizer if we can avoid it at all. Look, no, if there's frost promised, I'd be inclined to steer clear of it, all right? Because if ground is frosty and there's fertilizer out on it, and you know, we can get runoff off it, okay, and we probably not the best from an environmental point of view. So if there's frost promise and ground gets hard, look, I'd steer clear of putting any fertilizer out as such.
And there was a question in there in regard to soil temperatures. What did you say they were in?
Soil temperatures, I just checked
moment?
them out, Dylan. They're just about 6.9 degrees, okay, just below 7, yeah. So, but they're varying throughout the countryside, but they're as high as 8 and maybe 8.5 degrees in certain parts of the country, and then as low as less than 5.5 in others. So look, it's variable depending on your soil type.
With the
well.
weather at the moment too, they could be going down.
Going down when it's
maybe
cold,
going up.
when a lot of water on the ground, it's going to get colder again, yeah.
And Shane, soils, just a question in regard to the testing the pH of your ground, see how much lime you need. That's part of a standard soil sample, isn't it?
Yeah, look, when you do your standard soil sample, you'll get back your pH result, and you'll get back your P and your K on it. So yeah, that's standard soil sample.
Okay. A lot of questions there, but I think I've hopefully summarized the most of them there, Shamey.
I think you have, Donal, yeah. I think you have, yeah. Look, in the interest of time, I suppose we're going a few minutes over, and there was an awful lot of questions there, an awful lot of relevant questions, I suppose, and I would thank Donal for handling those for us. Thanks to two lads, Shane and Enda, for presenting tonight. And I suppose maybe just before I finish up, I just want to highlight a couple of events that's coming up. On Tuesday, the 8th of March, there's a managing fertiliser cost in 2022 event on the farm of Gavin White and Abbey Shrewhill. That's on Tuesday, the 8th of March at 11 a.m. And this night week in Castlerea here, we're having a public meeting on the topic of fertiliser and the organic scheme, the current organic scheme. So that's this night week, the 28th of February at 8 p.m. and that's in the hub in Castlerea. So also as well, I suppose, just keep an eye out on your emails and social media, etc., for our future upcoming webinars. So with that, again, I want to thank the three lads for giving me a hand tonight, and thanks yourselves for participating with a big crowd on, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.